Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another show of Weekends with Amit. Today, we are going to learn a very important thing. We all live in a certain way, and sometimes we want to live in a certain way. There are a lot of times when we think of the past and the future, but not the present. And there are lots of confusion, difficult times, and sometimes maybe mental issues. But what is the best way to live? How to make the best use of the consciousness that we have? How can you expand it and stay there? Let's learn from the experts. Help me welcome Professor Amit Goswami and Dr. Valentina Onisor.
Hello, everyone.
I
Thank you for joining us today. Today's subject is how to live in expanded consciousness. And I am certain that this is something that many of us are very eager to know and learn so that our quality of life goes up significantly. To start with, Professor Goswami, your take on this.
It's an important subject, all right, but I'm not positive if people know what it means. So, first of all, let's try to uh, make sure that you know what we are talking about. Um, when we say consciousness is expandable or contractible, what do we mean? Contracted consciousness is one that can only include oneself in its carrying. We call it me centeredness. How we receive this, how we get this way is, of course, connected with the whole manifestation process. We come from the oneness, but we have to forget the oneness to a considerable extent in order to be stable in our separateness. Because unless we are separate, unless we can access both a separate self, which can develop software, learn a lot of stuff that is necessary to do in the world, and then learn also creativity and cooperate with quantum self, we cannot really live up to our full potentiality. So there are two parts to it. One is the ego development, and then, of course, reclaiming our true self and find a balance between how much to live in the ego, how much to live in the quantum self. And this is when we have a dynamic life of happiness. That means what? That means that part of the time I can be in oneness, right? And if I'm in oneness, I can include everyone. What happens in the path? What happens is that, of course, we cannot stay in the oneness. Oneness is a present centered state that's just very momentary. But we can, on the other hand, don't have to be me centered when we are in the ego, when we are in the personal self. Usually, people are not that me centered, at least people of my generation certainly are not that me centered because in the time that I grew up, people lived in large families. At least even in the West, they had some awareness of their family, immediate family, aunts, uncles, siblings, elder siblings especially, and their wives. And it would be very interesting to remember that the dynamic that a child has with other adults in the house, that is very special. It grows, it grows a sense of otherness, love of others, trust of others. And then you can include others in your consciousness. So in my generation, all people knew what an expanded consciousness means, the ability of caring for others. Today, we grew up in nuclear families, just parents, and parents work all the time. We are thrown into a child care center. Uh, if you are so lucky, then the caregiver would be a good person, and therefore you would have some care. She will include you specifically. And that helps you to develop a trust for her, substitute for mother part of the time. And then, of course, If the mothers are caring, if the father is caring, they will interact with you. So at least you have a few adults and you can develop some sense of otherness. But imagine all these people who don't even have this availability. Parents are too busy. Even after they come from work, they don't pay attention to you. They're so tired, they go directly to the TV to entertain themselves. And everybody sits before TV and entertains rather than talk and have family concerns, relationships, etc. They relegate you as soon as you're able to your cell phone and social media. As soon as you can learn to access it, that's what you do. In this way, you develop a double dose of me-centeredness. The first dose comes from the way you are built, the very manifestation science that forces you, brain forces you. The second part is human created. Because of our modern lifestyle, we have forgotten this part that expanded consciousness brings us, guess what? Happiness. This is the part that has been forgotten. People just don't know anymore. That happiness is not a dry martini. Happiness is not having sex. Happiness is not eating good food. Yes, those things give us stuff in the brain. We call them dopamine molecules. Yes, an overdose of dopamine will give you some sort of exalted feeling, but they're molecule created. As soon as the molecules go away, they too go away. And no after effect, nothing left. Empty feeling, in fact. So you don't even know what really happiness is. Happiness is a state of somewhat of stability. If you expand your consciousness by living in a family, you will find often that is very comforting. You are being comforted without having anybody in your vicinity. It's like you are sitting in your mother's lap, but mother is not there. You feel comfortable. That's happiness. Okay? This ability of having an expanded consciousness, even when you are by yourself. Today, what do you do when you are by yourself? You are fidgety, hyperactivity, inattention. You don't have the capacity of attending anymore. You don't even judge that, okay, I am being something. You're bored. You just mechanically attend to keep yourself busy with your cell phone or whatever have you if you're able to. So this me-centeredness, this contraction of consciousness, that's another way of putting it. Additionally, serves some stress as you grow up. We are talking about children until now. What happens when you grow up? Even more serious. You already have double dose of me-centeredness, and then stress is added. Stress is much less in childhood because parents, after all, take care of you. Even in today's society, middle-class parents, they take care of you. Things change when parents are very poor. The dynamic depends. That even if the parents take care of you, gradually you will notice that early childhood is still can be less stressful, least stressful, although some children suffer from trauma because their parents are neglecting them. But most children, childhood is a happy time. And then it gradually decreases because stress already increases the way our education is set up today. By the time you reach puberty and sexual awareness begins, stress also gets up. So by the time you're adult, the stress level is quite huge because another concern has been added. Besides the concern of whom do I mate with, another concern, which is what is the meaning of my life? And that one has no proper response in today's culture. Another stress. And the more stress you get, the more contracted you become, more me-centered you become. Every transaction that you have, every communication that you have, every relationship that you have, your primary question is, what is in it for me? What is in it for me? Moi, always me-centered. Contracted consciousness. Complete inability to take an other in your care. In this state, how do you expect to have relationship? There's no room in you. So do you see how important it is to join this discussion, pay attention, and hear some of the things that we suggest? I am pointing out the problems. Our colleague, collaborator Valentina Onisor is the answer giver for this show. And she will give you some remedies. Valentina?
Right. Remedies. First of all, again, we have to understand the problem, right? As you mentioned, Amit. And also, if I would recommend the book, The Quantum Brain, to start with, to understand these problems in depth. Because once we understand this base level human condition, and what is this human condition that we also, all of us have, then the things become easier. But once we look at it, kind of, if we don't really look at it, of course, it's kind of, we are living in somebody else's movie, and we don't have at all our own meaning to grasp upon, right? And if you want, expansion of consciousness is this ability to include others, and it includes what is called compassion. Yeah, and also this expansion is the signature of non-locality. And of course, what is the easiest way to access non-locality? It is, of course, the heart. Yeah. So when everybody knows that when you are hit a little bit even by love, and the heart is obviously a crucial factor in terms of feeling this expansion. You feel suddenly that you have courage, you can manifest spontaneous, which otherwise when we live in this me-centered way, we lose that kind of spontaneity. Yeah, we cannot even speak about freedom. So also together with when we step in this space of non-locality, we also have the chance to step in what is called intuitions, and also in the supramental level of our being. The heart can really be a gate for the supramental experiences. So also, if you think in terms of health, yeah. So when we live a lot in a constricted consciousness, in this ego way of living, the chances for healing is not much, there. So again, in order to create new conditions, we need to kind of loosen up a little bit, and relax. And how we relax, again, this kind of relaxation that comes from this space of non-locality. Yeah. So again, intuition, if in the thought level, if you think only that, the expansion is quickly blocked by mental habits of rational thought, But again, in the heart, especially as a child, because I spoke about children, and it is very important how we grow up. If we, again, in the heart, we don't immediately cover this expansion by rational thought, it's in kids, it becomes indeed a competing factor, but it's not so overwhelming because kids and they are altruistic in nature. Yeah, and again, the way we grow up is very important. If we grow up in a city, and again, we are just surrounded by buildings and machines and all that, we don't have the contact with nature. Then we don't have, and of course, with a harmonious family, it's very important if to have these factors, to make it easier later on as we develop, So this the way a child grows is very important. So and also how you develop autonomy, even the navel chakra. After, first of all, you have a good contact with your parents. especially the mother. But then again, also developing the navel chakra is very important around the age 4, 5, 6 years old. This autonomy needs to be developed, and especially very good relation with the father will facilitate that. And then the way the child is opening to perceive the others around him or her. And again, if this doesn't happen, what happens is that if you don't get into the space of respecting and loving yourself, you cannot respect and love others either. So even if a child would have developed some natural expansion of the heart, having a loving mother, for example, this expansion is lost if you don't develop also the navel, the self-worth. And that's why it's very important to pay attention to this. And this ability again to be compassionated with someone, compassion with passion with someone, to share a feeling with someone, later on develops in what is called empathy. And again, this is no local. So this is also misunderstood because of material worldview. But again, if expansion is being connected with non-locality, with the quantum self, and with the form of happiness, this is, of course, not an explosive molecular happiness, but it's a profound one that can only be appreciated if we grow up with it. So again, expansion of consciousness. Again, if you think of the word consciousness, it's not so easy to define it. It's in the Upanishads are saying it's Sat Chit Ananda, and usually we only think of Chit to start understanding what is that. But then again, if you what we speak in quantum science is more if you check the book Quantum Spirituality, we'll see that the whole idea of quantum spirituality is to shift the traditional spiritual practice, which is emphasizing only on the quantum self, and indeed that's very important. But in quantum spirituality, we shift this traditional practice of only emphasizing the self archetype. We instead focusing on any archetype, preferably in relation with our Dharma, with our personal Dharma, and to eventually take the quantum leaps and make gradually the shift of character. And all that, again, implies the work on expansion of consciousness. Yeah? And again, the journey towards the quantum self is a journey of increasing intelligence and also increasing health and happiness as we do that. Yeah. So again, the quantum self is just the doorway to an expanded consciousness of, yes, infinite new potentiality. But again, it's important to understand that this journey is also developed in stages. Yeah, so it's not just at once. It requires proper preparation and to become aware where we are. And then again work through creativity in the do-be-do style. Yeah, to eventually bring more and strengthen all the positive emotional brain circuits and surround yourself with vital energy, again, being in nature, cultivating love through whatever you can, acting out of love, not so much just out of fear, and so on. So there's the whole journey waiting for all of us.
That's wonderful. Really, that was very apt description of how this expansion of consciousness, spirituality, happiness, true happiness, not molecular happiness, are all connected. So definitely that's something we should all know. I personally feel if we actually look at the spirit of this inclusivity, which the expansion of consciousness is talking about, then most of the problems in the earth that we are facing would not have existed. Unfortunately, the message is yet to spread enough, but we hope that it will certainly do. And to wrap up, I would again invite Professor Goswami to say a few words.
Well, Valentina gave the really quite exhaustive description how to get into the path for happiness. Just to make sure, your dharma means the archetype that you choose your personal archetype. The theory, quantum science says that you choose it at the deathbed in your last incarnation. That's when the choice is made. But that archetype is your gateway to bliss, which is the meaning of that word ananda in Sanskrit. So, if you are into happiness or into ananda, then you are really fulfilling the objective of manifestation. The definition in the Upanishad is Sat Chit Ananda is so beautiful. Sat is just existence, you have it. Chit is the doorway to manifestation. Sat doesn't care about manifestation. Unmanifest is fine for existence. It exists. Unmanifest is our unconscious. We exist. But with Chit, we have the opportunity of doing something about our existence. So we manifest. What can we do? What is the objective? And Upanishads are very right in saying the objective is happiness, ananda. Expand. How do we expand? That's where heart, navel chakra, all those things come in. Why? Because they are the gateway, better than easier than the brain for access to the archetypes. These archetypes, which ancient people looked at as God's attributes, today we look at them as human values: abundance, power, love, goodness, truth, beauty, justice, wholeness, and self. These 9 archetypes. Human professions are made to explore them. We have lost the touch with these archetypes. We occasionally become aware of it. For example, beauty. Why do we like to look at sunset? Every once in a while we connect to the archetype. Why do we take a walk in the forest? Again, every once in a while we get expansion of consciousness through an archetype. These archetypes are easy to reach, beauty. But there are other archetypes. Love, of course, this one comes naturally because of our relationships. But anyone who is close to relationship has lost the access. How tragic that is. And then you have more subtle archetypes, abundance and power. On the face of it, they make you more egocentric. It seems like that, but not really. When you mix power with love, when you mix abundance with goodness, then you can share your power, you can share your wealth with others. Have you given with that sharing in mind? I had a practice in my life when my teacher told me, okay, you start giving to these homeless people, which were just coming into the society right at that time, 70s America. I took it very seriously. Initially, I was not getting it. Then one day I had to change a little my teacher's advice. I always had kind of misgiving. What is the guy going to do? He's just going to spend the money to a glass of beer or maybe even worse, marijuana. So I had an intuition, why don't I ask the person? Instead of making the prejudgment, why don't I just ask? So I, with some reservation, of course, I'm a shy person basically, was at that time very much shy, but I asked anyway. Please, if you don't mind, what would you do with this money? I gave him a $5. The guy says, why do you want to know? I told him about my practice. Then he took me seriously. He said, you are very right. It is true that some homeless people do waste their life like that because they have nothing to look forward to. But most of us, we are just simply trying to survive. And some of us have family. My wife has a young child and she can't work. And so she's sitting in the car right now. And if I get enough money, then we'll go and buy milk for the child first, and then we'll get something to eat. It's that bad. He touched me. Compassion I felt. And you know what happens? In that expansion of the heart, I felt happy. I felt happy like never before. It's like a well of happiness opened for me. It can be like that for you. Give, forgive, all these things. You have to come to our workshops and seminars. Valentina has some very nice practices that she teaches. It touches you, it opens your heart, and it's open to everybody. Everybody. All of us can do that. All of us can live in happiness. Would you like to try? Thank you.
Well, on this note, I would like to add that we are going to have a free webinar on 8th of July at 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time on the courses that we have on offer. The courses which will go really, really deep on what we are talking about here. Or if we look at this series, Weekends with Amit, if you look at these topics that we are picking up, they are somehow related to the courses that we are offering, most of them. And these are all very important things for life in general. Forget about a degree or something. I'm talking about our lives. So we are going to have a discussion where we will have the faculty members as well as some of our students sharing their experience. Any of you, if you wish to join that webinar, it's free. Drop us an email at info at amitgoswami.org, and we'll get back to you with the link. So you can join, you can see, or you can hear what is going on. And if you like what you see, do reach back to us. We'll show you a path. Thank you so much. Thank you both for being here.